It's 7 o'clock.
Hey.
All right. What? Did I just cut you off?
I am. I got it.
All right. Good evening, everybody. The time is 7 p.m. and we're going to officially call this meeting to order. Shannon, I guess it's you tonight.
Sure. Counselor Miller,
Present.
Counselor Downs is excused absent. Counselor Parrish,
Here.
Counselor Purser,
Here.
Counselor Hancy, Counselor Williams.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. And because we have a bunch of people in the house today, would you guys mind introducing yourselves and your titles so everybody knows who everybody is?
Sure. Shannon Boston, Assistant City Manager for the City of Fruita.
Mike Bennett, City Manager.
Dan Karras, Planning Director.
Right. Thank you. At this moment, I'd ask everybody to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. We have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second?
Second.
Counselor Hancy,
Yes.
Counselor Purser,
Yes.
Counselor Parrish, Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Williams. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. We have two proclamations tonight. The first proclamation is proclaiming September 2024 as Suicide Prevention Month in the city of Fruita. And this is to be accepted by Mesa County Behavioral Health Prevention and Education Coordinator, Jennifer Daniels. And first, Amy, would you kindly read our proclamation?
Proclaiming September 2024 as Suicide Prevention Month. Whereas suicide is a national public health challenge that causes immeasurable pain among individuals, families, and communities across the country. And whereas per 1,000 residents, Mesa County's suicide death rate remains higher than the state and national average. And whereas the county's already high suicide rate increased even more over the last 2 years with a total of 57 deaths in 2022. And whereas a new study from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention described a shift in demographics of those dying by suicide in 2021. And whereas while rates among white Americans have been higher for decades than those among Black and Hispanic Americans, rates are now rising in minority populations. The report also noted that suicides are happening more often in younger minorities compared to older white adults. And whereas suicide rates rose 5% overall in people ages 25 to 44, and by even more among Black, Hispanic, multiracial, and Alaska's indigenous people. And whereas for every individual who feels alone, ashamed, or believes that they would be a burden if their thoughts or feelings were shared, there are scores of others in every community who want to help but are not sure how. And whereas according to the CDC, financial stress, social isolation, substance abuse, barriers to healthcare and access to lethal means like firearms are among the factors that can lead to suicide. And whereas residents of Mesa County can help raise awareness and lower the stigma surrounding suicide by asking friends and family if they're struggling and connecting them to resources like the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Now, therefore, we, the City Council for the City of Fruita, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2023 as Suicide Prevention Month.
Thank you, Amy. Jennifer, are you here? Right. Thank you. If you'd like to come up and say a few words.
Thank you so much. Excuse the attire. I was out with Mesa County co-response mental health teams all day today. So it's black on black on black, just no bulletproof vest. I thought I'd spare you guys that. Thank you so much. As a mental health advocate and suicide prevention advocate in our community for almost 10 years, I love to see when communities take this lead, and Fruita has done that. And as a Fruita resident, I feel proud that you guys have done that. And so as you read that, it sounds doom and gloom, but we are higher. But our statistics wise, it shows that we are stabilizing in the rates. And so we're doing something, and things like this to bring awareness and continue to have those things available to community members to show that, hey, the community leaders notice and they're paying attention and they want to make sure it's at the top of mind, is really important. So thank you for that. Thank you for this, and thank you for playing your role in suicide prevention, and all of us working together, we can make a difference. So thank you.
Thank you.
And do you have a? Sure. I did not get the packet.
Oh, I don't.
The printout.
The printout.
Is it on Deb's desk or something, maybe?
We don't have one. We can go grab one very quickly if needed.
We usually have.
And normally we have one, so I apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, we can always we'll make sure we get it. Thank you very much.
Right.
We'll make sure.
Yeah.
we Get it.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to apologize on right now for the next one because I'm afraid I may butcher a name. So. All right, our next presentation is from Alana Moer. Like close? All right. Conservation Director of Colorado West Land Trust.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Shannon and Mike, for making sure I could make the agenda early in your budgeting session, since clearly I won't be here much longer making these requests. Ilana Moyer with Colorado West Land Trust, and I'm just going to give you a little background on the Land Trust, the Community Separator Program for those of you that are newer on the council, and then talk about our requests for next year. So the mission of the Land Trust is to protect agricultural lands, wildlife habitat, and scenic landscapes in Western Colorado for future generations to enjoy. Did you give me the wrong mouse? Don't worry. Stuff on your screen. Right. Now we'll see if it reaches over there or not.
Saw movement.
Okay, here we go. All right. So Colorado West Land Trust is a nonprofit organization that does land conservation work with private landowners. We also have done some land conservation work with some public agencies. We actually hold the Snooks Bottom conservation easement on the park with the city of Fruita. We've done some work on Monument Road with the city of Grand Junction, but the majority of the work that we do is with private landowners. We work from Mesa County down to the San Juan Mountains and then Blue Mesa Reservoir to the state line. Through that, we've conserved over 127,000 acres of private land that stays in ranching, wildlife habitat, farming, which is more what we conserve around the Fruita area. And then about 3,300 of those acres are in the valley floor. And we're very focused when we work in the Grand Valley in working in areas where cities and municipalities do not want to grow. So we don't want to conserve land within municipal boundaries. We don't want to conserve land within sewer districts. So that's something I want to make sure that we're on the same page about. Whoops. Sorry, I couldn't send the presentation. It was too big of a file. So I'm dealing with a PDF. Anyway, so we have kind of 4 components to our work. Lands conservation is the first step. So we work with landowners to conserve their properties. These are all private agreements that we make with landowners. They are recorded, so they stay with the properties forever. So the properties, once they're conserved, they'll stay a part of the agricultural land base. And then our follow-up after that is stewardship and monitoring. So we meet with landowners on a yearly basis to answer questions they have about conservation easements, monitor the easements, make sure their terms are being followed, and then we also have stewardship where we get community out to do riparian habitat restoration, getting rid of weeds. We've done invasive species removal and planting native plants like along the Monument Road on some of the work that we've done there. I want to speak a little bit specifically about the community separator area or the buffer program. This program was established in 2000 by the City of Grand Junction, Fruita, Palisade, and Mesa County all came together and said, we do not want to turn into the Front Range. We don't want to be one giant blob of development where you don't know that you're going from one municipality to another, except for a green sign on the side of the road. There's just this incredible economy, agricultural economy that surrounds our towns. And there's incredible heritage as well as wildlife habitat between our towns. So in 2000, the municipalities all got together and said, let's create what we call community separator areas or buffer areas. This actually won some national awards back in 2000 with the idea that the municipalities would agree not to annex into these community separator areas. And it designates essentially like DMZ, like buffer zones between the communities. And then the land trust was brought on as a nonprofit. We started in 1980, so we were already well established in the Grand Valley doing conservation work. But we were brought on as the entity to help facilitate conservation within those areas. So instead of telling landowners, with sticks that they can't do stuff, we were brought in to facilitate these deals and to bring funding to the table, write grants, and help landowners through these transactions. Seek granting agencies. So from 2000 to 2024, we've worked on farms in Palisade and in Fruita. We've conserved over 275 acres of peach and grape work in the Palisade area. Along the Colorado Riverfront Trail, we've conserved 2 properties specifically that allow the Colorado Riverfront Trail to go through it. One is the very eastern end of the trail in Palisade, the Arnett property, and another I'll show you a picture of in just a minute. We've conserved properties along Highway 6 and I-70 that are part of our view shed, not only for those of us that live here, but for tourism and furthering views along those, and then furthering views along the Fruit and Wine Byway in Palisade. I'm going to quickly show you Palisade, and then I want to spend a little more time on the work we've done in Fruita. So Palisade is in the yellow on this screen. The green area is the community separator area. So it's a little, the boundaries are a little more jagged than in Fruita. Fruita, it's pretty black and white. But the red are all properties that we've conserved. So these are voluntary agreements with landowners wherein they agree not to develop their properties and they'll stay in agriculture. And then the ones along the river, there's also amazing riparian habitat. And then this one, right? Anyway, the one at the far eastern side of the green buffer zone is the Arnett property. That's the terminus of the trail to date. Now, eventually we'll get it to Palisade eventually. This is an example of one of the fruit farmers that we've worked with in Palisade. Four generations represented in this photo. And they wanted to conserve the farm because it was a viable farm. Farming in Palisade, peach farms can be 20 acres and make it work for a family. And they wanted to expand their operation. So they used the funds from the conservation work that we did to then expand their operation and bring, now they have 2 sons that are, 2 grandsons that are working on the farm as well. And here is the Fruita area, community separator area. So it goes, the eastern boundary of it is 18 Road. So straight up and down, essentially that line, and then to 19 Road. And then we have, to 17 Road. And so the end of the buffer area is up by the BLM, essentially. And then down across the interstate, it is a little wider across the interstate over to the Colorado National Monument. The red are all properties that we've conserved. As you can see on the Fruita side, we've done a really nice job of actually grouping those properties together. So there's more support for conservation when it's all next to each other and you don't have a development moving in right next to a conserved area. And, there's conflict between ag and development uses. Just a few quick examples. For those of you that have been in Fruita for a while, you might recognize Dixie Williams. She was actually the first conservation agreement that we completed in the buffer program and the community separator program overall. So she was the first landowner that signed up. She felt very strongly about continuing agricultural economy in Western Colorado. And so she signed her ranch up, which was right there in the middle. And then we've been able to work with some of her neighbors as well. I mentioned that we had done some riparian riverfront habitat. This is property on the eastern side of the community separator area, just north of the river and just south of I-70, kind of where I-70 turns as right before your exit towards Grand Junction. And the riverfront trail goes right through the corner of this property. So people that are recreating can enjoy the beautiful views on this property. This property is not in the community separator area, but it does support some of the work that Fruita has been doing along biking and bike access. This is the Horse Thief Bench property. So it's the property that you see if you're doing, say, Rustler's Loop, or you're putting on the river at the Loma boat put in. This property is all conserved on River Right on the north side of the river. And then finally, just quickly, the last conservation easement we just completed last summer in the valley is Green Valley Ranch. It's a beautiful irrigated property. The landowners have done a lot of work with reclaiming this from a previous hemp operation. And then they also have put in waterfowl habitat on this property. So it's a really nice combination of agriculture and habitat work. And as I mentioned, we've partnered with Fruita on the Snooks Bottom property, which is such a nice amenity for the community. So our plans for 2025, we're pursuing conservation easements on working farms within the community separator area, have 2 farms that are about to close in the Palisade area. And then we're starting a very ambitious potential purchase of some farms in the Fruita buffer area and the Fruita area overall, with the idea of getting those conserved and then back into the hands of farmers. Then we're partnering with municipalities on some public access projects as needed. We're always here as a partner to the city of Fruita for any ideas that you might come up with that we could be a partner in. And to do that work, we're requesting $9,000 for the 2025 funding cycle, which is the same request I think we've had for maybe 5 years now, something like that. And that's my final slide. Well, I do want to end with a quote from Bruce Talbot. For those of you that know the Talbot family in Palisade, Bruce's father, his parents were some of the founders of the land trust. And he says that conservation easements really give them the certainty to know that the agricultural land will be there for future generations so they can make investments into the future in continuing their farming. So thank you very much for having me. Happy to take any questions you have.
Any questions? If not, can you pull up the slide again with the area that you're working in Fruita?
Yeah. Maybe I can pull it up. If not, I also sent this to Shannon, so Shannon, you could send it out.
There it is.
Slow down. All right.
So that rectangle, what are the east and west roads on that?
I believe it's, now I'm doubting myself.
Yeah.
20 and 19? Oh, 20 and 21. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes.
Oh,
more
18
sense.
was
My ears
Great.
kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't think 17.
20 and 21. Thank you.
And then the other, on one of your slides, you talked about Fruita farms. Do you work with farms that are inside the urban growth boundary or only outside the urban growth boundary?
We prefer to work outside the urban growth boundary. If something comes up inside the urban growth boundary, we would definitely be in touch with the city of Fruita to make sure that that would be something that would be compatible with how growth is perceived. We recognize that within urban growth boundaries, within sewer districts, there's a lot of infrastructure that's poured into that, a lot of funding that goes into making those, seeing growth expand there. And so we don't want to be standing in the way of areas where municipalities want to grow.
How are these partnerships developed? Do the owners of the property usually reach out to you, or how does that go?
We do both. So within the community separators themselves, within those designated areas, we've done active mailings to landowners to talk about opportunities for grants, talk about what the benefits are at the state. There's a tremendous tax benefit at the state level for landowners. We do that. We do, newspapers. I always feel like whenever we have a press release go out, that's when we tend to get a lot of calls. And then I can talk till I'm blue in the face about how great I think the work we do is, but really the best messaging is when a landowner talks to their neighbor who's done a project like this and says, what was your experience? How did it change how you farm or didn't change? And what were your incentives and how does it work for you? So I always feel like having that long-term relationship with the landowners that we've worked with makes them the best spokespeople for our work.
Financially, how comparable is it versus like a developer buying the land?
One of the first conversations I have with a landowner is you will make more money if you sell to a developer. I mean, that's just how land prices work. But if you are interested in seeing that your property stays in farming or stays in wildlife habitat, you have maybe a future generation that wants to take over farming, then this is a great way to get some equity out of your property in the form of cash that you can reinvest in more property, buy equipment, pay off loans, which are all pretty common things for landowners to do. But yeah, you can always make more selling to a developer. I know one.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
All right, next, we're going to open up to public participation. This section is set aside for the city council to listen to comments by the public regarding items that do not otherwise appear on the agenda. Generally, the city council will not discuss the issues and will not take an official action under this section of the agenda. We ask that you please limit comments to a 3-minute period. And if you do come up and speak, please state your full name and address. Is there anybody that would like to come up? Come on up.
Good evening, council members. Not sure if you can hear me on here. My name is Sarah Bulletin. My address is 1877 J and 610th Road, and I'm here representing Save Fruita Farms. Imagine you buy your dream farm and you spent years searching and you finally find the perfect piece of land. You invest your savings, time, and hard work into building the future, growing food, and raising your family. But then one day you receive a letter, not a warm welcome, but a notice from a contractor. They want your land for a road expansion, and suddenly your dream is threatened. Not because of any fault of your own, but because your land is in the way of a plan that sees it as expendable. This isn't just my story. This is the story of many in Fruita. Families and businesses who have poured their lives into their land now face losing it to a project that offers little benefit to our community. The proposed 19 road expansion threatens farms, beloved local businesses like the Shabby Moose, Badeau Reminiscence Dairy Farm, and even a historic 1800s era carriage house. These aren't just properties. They are our community's identity, heritage, and economic backbone. I stand here today with a petition that is signed by 1,000 community members who oppose this expansion. We're not against progress, but we're against thoughtless development that destroys what makes Fruita unique. Our farmland and local businesses and our community's character are too valuable to be paved over for a road that doesn't meet the traffic justification for such drastic changes. I urge you to halt all right-of-way acquisitions immediately. Take the time to listen to our community, consider the impacts, and explore smarter, more sustainable solutions to preserve our heritage and support local businesses. We can find a better path forward, one that truly serves the people of Fruita. Please stand with us. Please protect what makes our community special. and know that this issue is very important to Fruita residents and must be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to come up and speak? Please, sir, come on up.
Tom McNamara, 1768 Waters Lane, Fruita. Slightly out of the city, just ever so slightly. In any event, I was here over a year ago, speaking on behalf of the Muse project. At that point, it was in its infancy, and we have seen the progress of that. I assume all of you have seen the development in its current state, which is absolutely fantastic, fabulous. For workforce development, 30% to 100% of average family income in the valley. The intent is to provide workforce development housing. There's a proposal now by the same developer to expand to the south to include 40 new units, some of which will be 3-bedroom, some of which will be 2-bedroom, and again, the single-bedroom units. So I'm just here again to support that concept. We need all of the affordable workforce housing that we can muster together and without opposition. I mean, this is a real plus for Fruita to have an attractive, I assume you've all seen it, to have an attractive and well-developed housing unit in the within the city. So with that said, I would like to encourage you all to go forward and approve that project through the Planning Commissioner and also the Development Committee.
Thank you.
That's it.
Appreciate it.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I didn't, last time I was up and this time also, I didn't greet you all and thank you for the opportunities at this time.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. All right. Is there anybody else who would like to come up and speak? We're in the public participation section. All right, with that, I'm going to close public participation. Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. These are items where all conditions or requirements have been agreed to or met prior to the time they come before the council for final action. These items will be approved by a single motion of the council. Members of the council may ask that an item be removed from the consent section and fully discussed. All items not removed from the consent section will then be approved. A member of the council may vote no on a specific item without asking that they be removed from the consent section for full discussion. Any items that are removed from the consent agenda will be placed at the end of the regular agenda. Actually, they'll be placed at the end of the consent agenda. All right, with that, I'd like to open that up to public participation. Is there anybody that would like to come and talk about anything that's on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to council.
No.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
No.
No? All right, hearing that, we need a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
We have a first and a second. Any additional questions or comments?
None.
Shannon, would you kindly poll council?
Counselor Purser, Counselor Hansi, Counselor Williams,
Yes.
Counselor Miller,
Yes.
Parrish.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Great, thank you. With that, I'd also like to acknowledge two people, Frank Graziano and Mel Mulder. Frank has been appointed to the Police Commission and Mel is once again agreed to partake in the Planning Commission. So once again, we always thank everybody that's help out and serve our community. So thank you to those gentlemen. We have no public hearings tonight. So with that, we're going to move ahead to the administrative agenda. We have one item on that agenda, and that's the Housing Resources of Western Colorado and Indibuild presentation. And Mike, are you going to kick it off or is Dan?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Similar to 2 weeks ago, but a different affordable housing or workforce housing proposed project for the city of Fruita. I will give a brief opening, even though it's covering the same information as last time, but for a different project. So just as a reminder, in 2020, the city council adopted the Fruita in Motion Comprehensive Plan after a year of community engagement. Over 4,000 of our residents engaged in a meaningful way, and over 40 in person and multiple online opportunities to weigh in on how Fruita grows, where Fruita grows, what the community values are, and how to solidify the community values within our policies, such as the land use code and other master plan documents that were later updated following the completion of the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan has a section that is dedicated to efficient development, and very specifically shows the urban growth boundary. In 2020, we brought that urban growth boundary in, so we made it smaller than it was for the previous decade, and then went through the process to update all the subsequent policies and master plans through public processes as well. In the comprehensive plan, it also gets specific about there are strategies and goals related to workforce or affordable or any type of housing that fits the gap that we find ourselves in, like many areas, between the average pay and the average costs of housing. Specifically, there is a goal in Chapter 4, and it's a strategy of 4C that describes various groups that the city should look into working with, and one of those groups is housing resources. So we're happy to have them here tonight. Emily Powell is the Executive Director of Housing Resources, and then Kim Pardo represents Indibuild, who, as mentioned earlier by Mr. McNamara, is completing the Muse project, but this is a new proposal as laid out in your packet. We see definitely with this proposal, there are connections to some of the goals and strategies that the city has. And we will let our guests give their presentation and proposal, and then our Planning and Development Director, Dan Karras, and/or myself are happy to take any questions you have along with our guests.
That's your cue.
Yes. So yeah, thank you. Well, good evening. Thanks for having me. I'm Emily Powell. I'm the Executive Director at Housing Resources. And my friend Kim, as you know her well. I don't think I need to introduce Kim. But Housing Resources is a 501c3 nonprofit that's been active here in Mesa County for almost 50 years. We'll be celebrating 50 years here pretty soon. I can't advance.
Gotcha.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So we serve Fruita with a number of services that are all around helping people achieve affordable housing. That's helping renters and homeowners and home buyers. We've been excited to partner with Kim as the Fruita Muse comes to life. We're going to be doing some homeownership work there to help the residents of the Fruita Muse get a handle on their financial fitness. And if they have a goal of homeownership, help them along that continuum to homeownership. Tonight, what we're wanting to talk about is kind of the next phase of that, which takes that partnership a step further. What we'd love to do is acquire the land that's next to the Fruita Muse through a grant from CHAFA's Prop 123 land banking application, and do a hybrid 10-year project there, meaning rental and ownership in the same site. So really actually bringing the continuum right there to one site. The request tonight for you is to hear our idea, ask us a lot of questions, and consider if you might be supportive in that partnership. There's a couple of ways that could look, and Kim will talk about that more as we advance through those slides. Next one. So I don't need to bore you too much with our mission and vision, but I think the thing to point out here is that our work is really centered around this idea of equitable housing and healthy communities. So we look at housing as a means to an end. Financial self-determination and security, as well as that healthy community that really is based on a healthy housing continuum. Okay, I didn't do that ourselves. I already mentioned that we do services for renters, home buyers, and homeowners. And on the homeowner side, or the home buyer side, I should say, that includes our sweat equity homeownership program that we've had here active in Fruita many times. We're just now starting to do traditional for sale development We launched our down payment assistance program this year. Already had to go back to the state to ask for some more money, but that's a product that's currently available to people in Fruita as well as all of Mesa County. And of course, we're a HUD-approved counseling agency, which means we provide free housing, individualized housing counseling and coaching on just about any housing subject, as well as the HUD-approved homebuyer education class. And all the other wonderful things we do is some nice pictures of our happy homeowners building their own home through one of our sweat equity programs. I think 80 of which have been in Fruita. So we're excited to partner with Kim. That's a good segue here for me to have Kim talk a little bit more about what they want to do and what they have done.
Thanks, Emily. I just wanted to quote Fruita Tourism, and I don't know who the author is. Does anybody know if that is that Ciara?
It depends.
I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just took a snapshot. I took a screenshot of a post the other day that popped up on my Facebook, and it says, "People come from all over because of how Fruita makes them feel. Fruita is the way it is because it's well cared for, and when something is loved, it gives that love right back." And so that just touched my heart, and I just wanted to share it because I think you guys all know how much I love Fruita. So I am excited to be here tonight, and thank you for having us to talk to you about continuing our mission to create a community in community. So I think we can just breeze through who Indibuild is, because we're basically a new urbanist inspired community development company that is in continual pursuit of creating spaces for people to be in community together and have meaningful relationships. And so I'm going to breeze through this one too. I just wanted to give you guys an update on the Fruita Muse for those of you that didn't make it on the tour. It's 50 rental townhomes between 30 and 100% of area median income, and 1, 2, and 3 bedroom homes, townhomes. And we are basically on schedule to complete in October, which is when we are scheduled to complete, on time and on budget. And I am happy to let everybody know that that's even outdated. As of this morning, we were 134 prospects on our list, and we are now, as of last Tuesday, accepting applications. And we have, as of this morning, 30 applicants already, so full applications with fees. So I don't know that we're going to need to do much more marketing. What I think we need to do is build more housing. And so I'll get to, I'm not sure where it is in the slides, and Dan's controlling, but before we move on to the demand that created sort of the inspiration to partner with Emily and Housing Resources. Sorry. I just wanted to let, for those of you that weren't here, and for my own edification, just all of us, we partnered with Fruita, the Fruita Housing Authority, kind of at the last minute when it was formed, and we were closing on the Fruita Muse in July of last year. We were able to secure over $20 million of federal and state funds for that property. And through, well, as part of the $20 million, some of the monies needed to come in as grants. And in our partnerships, we are not allowed to have grants because they screw up the tax basis for our investors. So we had generated 2 grants, one from CHAFA in their capital magnet funds. And that was for $170,000. And then we were able to secure a grant from the Colorado Energy Office for being highly energy efficient and all electric. And that grant was for like $1,391,000 and change. And so I just wanted to highlight that I did go to your audited financials last week and did see that the $170,000 was funded to the property in 2023. And so that sits on your balance sheet now as a notes receivable. And then this year we are in the process of doing our 3rd draw with Joe, now Margaret's replacement, for to draw down the 391,000 from Colorado Energy Office. And so by the end of this year, we will have drawn down all of it because we'll complete construction. And so that will add another 1,391,000 in assets and notes receivables to your balance sheet. And in addition to that, for those of you that weren't around, we did also provide the Fruita Housing Authority with a priority of cash flow payments. It's maybe first or second after we pay our hard debt. We are going to pay the Fruita Housing Authority $5,000 a year, which we will have more than enough to pay that. So it should not accrue much, but it will grow every year with CPI. And then we have other payments that kind of flow through the cash flow waterfall. And then upon disposition, lots of different things could happen. You guys could buy it, or the Fruita Housing Authority could buy it. We could continue owning it, or a third party could buy it, in which case that it would be a balloon payment, and that third party would have to purchase it. If it was the housing authority or the city, a city-related entity, it could be forgiven. And then that right of first refusal is what triggers all that. And then the last column is just all the collaborators that we've been working with since 2021 that we're excited to partner with. And then this is just a quick slide to show you guys, for those who don't know, that the gates are down now. You can drive through, but here's a drone shot of sidewalks that were poured a couple days ago. And a nice sunset. This slide was put together by us a couple days ago with our prospect list. We culled it and pulled out what demand we're seeing. It's kind of, we've been getting prospect lists every week for the last couple months, but this one was pulled last week. And what I wanted to point out was it's the inspiration, I think, for me to start really for us to start considering conversations with Emily and Housing Resources about furthering the continuum of housing, because what we're seeing is a lot of demand for the 3 bedrooms. That shows 34%, I think.
Yes, it
Mhm, yeah.
Sorry. 34%, we don't have 34% 1 bedrooms. We have 3 bedrooms. We do not have 34% 3 bedrooms. We have 10 of 50. So what I'm seeing is a strong demand for 3 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, frankly, and only 23% for 1 bedroom. So that was very surprising to me, because if anybody's read the Grand Valley Housing Needs Assessment, or any other, I'm not really sure what else would highlight that, but a lot of other developers in the valley are building 1 bedrooms. And that's what basically all the market study analysts are showing the need for, is a lot of 1 bedrooms. And they're all filling up really quickly in Grand Junction, but something told me to build 3 bedrooms next to a school in Fruita. It's not rocket science, but it felt like people moved to, what I was hearing before we designed the Muse was people moved to Fruita to raise a family. And we had a brand new school there, and I just felt like it would be nice to have an opportunity for a single mom, et cetera, to be knowing that her child is safe, doesn't have to cross the street, has after school STEM programming from Eureka, and just be not stressed out at your job at 4 o'clock every day. And so I guess I had her in mind, him. So for moving forward, what I think with that, the incomes on the left, what we're seeing, I don't really think that in the end we will see this breakdown, but what I found interesting is that roughly 60% are at the high and the low of our incomes. And I found that really surprising as well. I think it'll spread out. I looked at some of the applications that we received of the 30 applications, and they're a little more spread out than that. But what is important is that there is a lot of 3 bedrooms. Bedrooms that are at 100% of area median income. And so what that tells me is that we really do need to provide the continuum of housing for people who may just be in an apartment until one of their homes is built, with down payment assistance and state and federal funds to help bring down affordability for the homes that Housing Resources will build. And so I really can envision the campus there. I couldn't come up with something that sounded like aging in place, but it's like families like growing in place, like not needing to where their kids go to school. And I know that that's super important. So you could like start there and then move into, you know, something that fits your income as your income grows. So that was my most interesting slide. And the inspiration. Am I doing this part already? Okay. So that brings us to the Fruita Commons. And that is the partnership between Housing Resources and Indibuild. And we, as discussed, want to grow the housing, the options for housing in Fruita in a safe and environmentally friendly location, to a brand new elementary school, and then on a corridor to Fruita High School. It might make more sense to go to the next slide. Easy to talk about and visualize. So it's just a vision. It's not necessarily the full, we haven't designed the property yet. You know, a lot of what is going to come out of it is demand. And so I can kind of predict my demand because I have an active lease up going on pretty soon here with applications, and we can dissect it and figure out what we need to build. I think for Housing Resources, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but it's really dependent upon your funding sources and the demand. And it's kind of like a patchwork of figuring out what they need to build for homeownership based on how much subsidy they can bring in and what the demand is. And so we laid out just something that I feel like gets the units, gets the homes, the units on the site, and kind of lets you see what it would feel like at a density that is close to community residential 4 to 8, which is its future land designation. And so I think we're gonna, like the Fruita Muse, try to stay within that designation. The Fruita Muse is 7 units per acre. And so this, I think, has 96 units on it. I did not count them personally, but it's 96, which would be about just under 7 units per acre, which when you take out streets, you're basically at 8 units per acre. I think we could go to the next. Well, I guess, so go back. Sorry, Dan. We just threw different housing types on there. So the east is where we were conceptually thinking of putting the Fruita Muse Phase 2. Obviously, it's across the street from the clubhouse, and it kind of provides continuity to Phase 1 for amenities and property management. And I guess I liked the way it felt because it kept some of the density away from Brandon Estates, because we do want to feather into Brandon, the north side of Fremont Road, or whatever they have as the sign out there, for the Bernheide entrance, and the back side of the homes in Brandon Estates. So the concept is to feather it so that it feels similar in nature to what is adjacent to it, and then put the density over on the east. I think that's it. Obviously, we'd want to build in all amenities that we would expect to continue as we did in the Muse. So, you know, additional park space. We did on that concept plan, we have a nature trail that wraps around the south side, and I guess we would continue it and wrap around the entire property. If that were to take, if the space allowed for it. And yes, I think our goal would be to work with the city staff and Dan and figure out how to best entitle the property so that we could maintain the street standards and the detached sidewalks and the tree-lined streets and just really keep that community feel. And then the next part of this slide is affordability. So it would just, the Fruita Muse is kind of a weird, it was like a one-off kind of financing. We were originally going to be 30 to 80% of area median income, but with timing, we had to, we were capped out on how much funding we could get from the state for tax credits. And so it ended up being 30 to 60s, capping out on our subsidy and then wanting to create something that was well over 60, because honestly, in our market study, our first market study that we did for the Muse, it actually showed our best demand, our strongest demand was in the 70s and the 80s. And because of the way the funders work, you can't really build a lot of 70s and 80s. And so we have 6 at 100% of area median income. And so for the Fruita Muse Phase 2, we'd like to apply in February for low-income housing tax credits and state tax credits, which they've combined with the 9% low-income federal credits now, moving forward for 2025. And we would like to do what they call an income average deal, which is 30 to 80% of area median income. So we could capture those 70s and 80s before Emily steals them into homeownership. Timeline. We're a little tight here. You know, it's funny, the applications for the 1, 2, 3 land banking were supposed to come out in March. Then they were supposed to come out June 1st. Then they were supposed to come out July 15th, and they just came out last week. They did give us some time to submit an LOI. With the LOI, we need to have the applicant identified. We need to have a purchase and sale agreement, and we need to give a status of zoning. And as much as this is 10-year money, it's extremely competitive. And so they are looking for shovel-ready properties, and we're not shovel-ready. Others have not been shovel-ready, and they've been funded as well. They're doing a geographic distribution that is very confusing to all of us. But they do want to spread the subsidy to all of the Prop 1, 2, 3 municipalities. And so kind of feel that Fruita is ripe. So that LOI just needs a couple things. It's due September 16th. We don't actually know all of the requirements because they're rolling out the LOI form on the 9th. So we'll have like a week to figure it out. Super helpful. Then they, after several conversations and reading their guidelines and being confused, what I gathered from them that I'm just going to share with you what I know is that they think that all of the funds, $48 million will get absorbed really quickly. It's first come, first serve this year. And so we need to have an LOI in on September 16th because we think all those funds will be spoken for pretty quickly. And so then they give you, after, if they look at all the applications, they then give you like what they're calling a notification, notice to proceed, like please submit an application. And they think that that will only take them 2 weeks. I'm not sure that I believe that, but if it were 2 weeks, that would bring us to like October 1st-ish or, the first week of October. And then they're saying, if they give you a notice to proceed, you have 60 days to submit a full application. So applications would then be due the first week in December. And then they're saying that it would probably take them a month to 2 months to award those land banking grants, which is a little tough for us. It's not that different than the Fruita Muse. When we applied, it's a little stressful, but we may not know whether or not we got our land banking grant when we apply for 9% tax credits. I believe we'll have a very good idea whether or not we're going to get the grant. But I mean, honestly, we cobbled together, as Dan knows, like $3 million at the last minute to get the Fruita Muse built because costs and interest rates were going up so fast. The Colorado Energy Office had a new grant program that they hadn't rolled out yet, and we were the first applicant, and we pushed them to create documents and get that to our closing. But they don't have, as far as we know, they don't have those funds available this year. So we will be really like getting the land grant would go a long ways for us. And so we're really, really, really hoping that we are chosen, and then we would find out in March. Or we would have our closing in March, and then we would find out about tax credit awards in May. And because I think that we can get phase 2 built quicker, my goal is to be out of the ground the first quarter of 2026, which would be great for, I don't know how the deadlines work for Prop 123, but I know that you guys have 134, I think is what I heard them say. You needed 134 units in 3 years. So I think we would be within that 3 years. Next slide. Oh, we may have moved it. So, we're here today to tell you about what's going on, to fill you in, and to see if you guys want to partner with us and in what way you would partner with us. And so the first way you could partner with us is as the applicant, because the Prop 123 funds, land banking funds, are open to municipalities and nonprofits. We are here to see if you guys are interested in being the applicant. And if you're not, it's okay, because I think Emily would happily be the applicant as well. And, you know, we'll move forward, but we are definitely applying on the 16th of September. So I think it might be best to open it up to Q&A so that you guys can further explore how you feel about that opportunity.
Before I open up to council, Dan or Mike, is there anything that you would like to add?
I think we'll go to questions and then we can add.
Before
You may have a couple of questions too as you go through.
Or bring it back to council, you have 3 options listed. Aren't there actually 4? Because we could choose not to participate, correct?
But you always have any options you create.
Okay, I'm just looking there, and as we look at it, we do have those 4. What? It's available to council.
Mayor and council, you're never limited to the, you're never limited to what's in the cover sheet as far as your options. Yeah, you can create new options.
So with that, open up to council.
I was just checking my math with the math guy.
Okay. So if I will kick it off if nobody else has got questions. So the 2 of the 3 options are direct us to ask Mike to furnish the housing resource, and the other one is to apply directly. Can you kind of go over pros and cons in your opinion of each one? And in risks as well.
I think if the city or FHA is the applicant, one of the biggest benefits that we have to that is control over the land. The other benefit that we have is the potential of actually doing some cost recovery if we were to participate on a long-term land lease. I'm assuming that Housing Resources is going to ask for a donation of the land for where the for sale product would be created, but the lease would be on the prospective land that Indibuild would construct the rental units on. So I think that we control the land. We control the fact that this property doesn't have the entitlements presently to construct what needs to be constructed on it, and we're communicated with kind of along the journey. That doesn't necessarily mean that Housing Resources being the applicant is a bad thing. That just means that those benefits that we would realize monetarily would then be realized by Housing Resources in the form of a lease of the land. So honestly, outcomes the same. I think that it is to kind of like our choice on what we would pursue. I think that the other big thing that is a benefit for the city being the applicant is it shows a lot of collaboration amongst multiple parties. And so I think that instead of just a letter of support, we're directly participating with housing resources and with a for-profit affordable housing developer. So I think that that could potentially strengthen our application. I don't necessarily know if it like would be the deal breaker, so to speak, but I think that when many hands get involved in these, it oftentimes strengthens your ask.
This group is really quiet. This is really making me nervous.
All right, I'll ask.
Thank you.
I have a bunch of questions. Are we associated with any other Prop 123 grant applications in any capacity?
Not at this time. We were not awarded the equity dollars, and the geode flats is a 4% tax credit ask with some private activity bond requests with Chaffa. And then, of course, the Oaks redevelopment that we're talking about right now would be an all locally supported endeavor.
Geo Flats counts towards the 1, 2, 3, right?
It counts towards the unit count,
Right, the unit.
but it's not using those funds, yeah. And what they asked for obviously was different than the land banking. It was from a different pot of money, so.
Explain a little bit about the land banking. So like the 1, 2, 3 is a grant to be able to buy the land, right?
It's a grant to a municipality and it's I don't know how you want to summarize it. It's a grant to a nonprofit, but if they don't build on it in 10 years, they would owe a below market, I think it might be 2% interest.
Yeah, I
that
think,
right?
yeah, I think the important distinction is it is a grant either to a municipality or a nonprofit. Either one can be the applicant. And then you have outcomes that are expected out of that. What's unique here is it's not that common in the housing world to have land acquisition grants. Most of them are kind of wanting you to figure out how to buy the land and then come in later when you're fully engineered and ready to build vertically.
Yeah.
So a land acquisition grant is a nice opportunity to pick up that land and start the project off right with your capital stack being built up with that affordability gap already.
And so we're dealing with a tight turnaround to decide if we want to potentially be an applicant or a supporter of this. And I think it was that September 16th. And that's just for the application for the 1, 2, 3. Are you anticipating on building everything to our current land use code, or are you thinking you might have to build get PUD variants?
We've been exploring whether or not it would be a major amendment to the PUD guide that's existing today, similar to how the Fruita Muse was asking to rezone, or potentially a rezone to community residential under conventional zoning. So those are the two things that they've been asking questions on, and we've been talking about different scenarios.
And so what you guys are dreaming up with this project is that you're going for the Prop 1, 2, 3 grant to help fund for the ground, and then also go again for tax credit housing grants, like different but similar to the Muse phase 1, and then other funding mechanisms to fund the rest of the project, right?
So I just did the math for next year. Assuming property appraisals for what's and we build approximately the highest, the max density on those acres, we would be saving $100,000 and that's similar set of math. Like for the Muse phase 2, that's $15,000 that we could use. To the level that we did it for the Muse was $450 or $450,000 for
I'm sorry, Kim, can I interrupt for a second? This is Mary Elizabeth and I'm attending via Zoom and I can't hear you. If you could speak, make sure you're speaking into the microphone.
Thank you,
Thank
Mary
you.
Elizabeth. I'm very sorry.
No, that's okay. Thanks.
Hello. Really should have so on. We're all awake now.
Very
Thanks.
sorry, Mary.
You can hear us, but we can hear you.
So do you want me to repeat that or?
You were I think you're just at the point.
15,000.
15,000, so like if the seller, if the property appraises and that matches the seller's asking price, which is the 1.5 million for 14 acres, the subsidy based on kind of max density at this point would be about $15,000 a home, which is a lot of money. So it would be transferred to a tax credit partnership, similarly, like we our land cost about the same for the Fruita Music phase
So
one.
you guys are just joining forces to be able to, for financing mechanisms, plus just meet the mission of the nonprofit.
Because these are home. Right, that's-
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly,
Yeah.
it's for the continuum.
Well, and it's also a bigger piece of land than like Kim would be able to fill with just one Fruit of Muse project. It's bigger than what we would necessarily want to build on. So it's a nice way to also make use of that parcel. It's one of the nice things with the Prop 123 is that it has like a 10-year build out. So that's a big project. That would be a lot for us to take on. So having a long time span to build is a good thing there.
Not to interject, but another distinct benefit of having two kind of like co-collaborative partners in this deal is they get to offset what would be fully on one or the other for the construction of Brandon Drive. And so that is to be shared across like both types of product that they're trying to build and not solely borne by just one over the other. And I think that was a big deal when we went through the Fruit of Muse process. There was a lot of road to build. And so I think this is kind of a creative way to try and offset some of those costs that were otherwise, not feasible. And believe, if my memory serves me correct, it was like in the $800,000 range back then. So quite a bit of money. And the mayor asked a question earlier about, I think the risks. I think one risk is for some reason getting the land banking dollars in for the partnership to fall apart. We have 10 years to bring another project, which is a long time. It's a lot of runway, I think. But that is a risk, but it is I think one that we can manage. We have a community partner that's been operating in the Grand Valley for quite some time. And I think that strengthens the request for sure, just because there's a known quantity. But that is one, to think about.
Just for my edification, if we say yes, it falls apart down the road, we have 10 years, but that has to be 10 years to some form of 1, 2, 3 type project.
Correct.
Have the same restrictions, which is 70% of the rental homes have to be at 60% of AMI or less. And for the homeownership, 70% needs to be at 120% of area median income or less, right? Or is it 100? It's 100.
For homeownership, it's 100%, but there's a little bit of wiggle where you can have some over market. 30%.
So with us being an applicant and that's signifying that we want to join in a substantial way to where we get that money and we put it towards the land purchase. And does that give us ownership in the property, or is it just we're the mediator with the?
It would be fee ownership. Yeah.
You would be the ground lessor to the rental property. And I think housing resources, you would pay land.
And so,
I wouldn't manhandle that mic too much. It's a bad habit of falling off the stand just.
That way.
and so financially, we're not out anything right now. It's just being part of the application potentially to receive those funds to them by the land.
Yeah, once the once they accept the LOI and it goes to application, we have 60 days to do the application. There might be some site planning costs. And entitlement, because we'll probably start the entitlement process pretty quickly. But I don't expect it to be a lot. If we're awarded, then we have to do an appraisal. And a phase one, and at some point a traffic study will need.
Do we have capacity as a staff to deal with the potential if council wants us to be applicants or a supporter in any way? Do we have capacity for those that deadline on the 16th or mid-September, whatever it is?
Yes, for going through that process. Fortunately, it's a letter of interest. Then I can't remember if you get invited for the next, putting the full application, but because it starts with a letter of interest in that turnaround time, we definitely can be ready for that.
So it does require purchase and sale, and I talked to our attorney, and he said that I could just make it, the purchase and sale could be from me, and I could make it assignable, because it is a tight time frame. That was easiest.
That's all my questions.
Any other questions? So can you help me understand? So if we say yes as an applicant or supporter to this today, but then down the road, the housing authority would be asked to be a partner on the LIHTC project. If the housing authority, any action we take today would not directly constrain, or I'm not sure what the right word, of what the housing authority could do down the road. So in theory, council could say yes to either one of these. The housing authority could say, no, we don't want to be a partner in this.
That is 100% correct. It doesn't commit us
Okay,
to any of those future requests.
right. And I understand this wasn't your doing, but we have this today and you have 13 days to get the application in. So there's not a whole lot of time. So if we want more information, there's that. I'm not sure how to ask my next question, but I'm going to ask it since I don't vote. So part of Fruita, we talk about, we want a variety of housing. We want a variety of mixes. And I've always taken that to be throughout our community. So as I look at this project, we are putting a lot of affordable housing. It feels like very much condensed right around the school. I'm looking for input, like, what impact does that have to surrounding communities? It could be good, could be bad. I just don't know the answers to this. And then as we look at this, for the target market that your group and the housing authority would be looking at, I would question like locality of services as well. So I guess my first question, and this is asked out of ignorance, if we put this community here, what is the impact to Brandon Estates and other communities? And I'm looking for any kind of guidance on
I'm
this.
actually really relieved that you brought that up because I wanted to be really excited about this because it's exactly what I've been asking for, but I don't love where it is. I have concerns about how condensed we're putting these. And I really would love to see them sprinkled more throughout Fruita rather than all in one little quadrant of our community. This is exactly what we need. Again, but I just have heartburn about this location, again, close to services. The school is great, like that makes a lot of sense, but the road, the traffic issues that we're potentially going to see. And I really would just love to see this in another, yeah.
I'm with you. I love the concept of,
Yeah.
because we've talked about needing that continuum.
Seriously, it's exactly what I've been asking for. This is what I've been bringing up over and over and over again. So like, I don't want to sound ungrateful. But I really am concerned about with everything that we have coming with what's being built. off of 19 Road that's not far from here. And with the Muse, I would really like to see it somewhere else.
Out of curiosity, like where in a different area, but closer to amenities, would a space like this even, like, do we have this? Does the city not own, but I mean, is there anything that is even available closer and spread out differently?
I mean, just off the top of my head, like I can't really think of any like specific parcels, but we could certainly try and like identify some and bring them back. You know, a lot of those parcels that are more interior to like our core, not all those are in the city. Some of them are still in the county.
Still, yeah.
They seem like they're developable pieces of ground, but they're not always. The one that comes to mind is the 18 and K, you know, but it's under construction presently, and then across the street is still in unincorporated Mesa County. So I can't think of any off the top of my head, but
That's sort of what I was thinking too. But
I might add a little bit to that if it's okay.
Please.
You know, the proposal to do this kind of joint hybrid program means you're targeting incomes from 30% AMI to 120% AMI. So you're going from like 20,000 to 120,000. It's quite a microcosm of your community right there. So you're not talking about 96 units that are all below 30% AMI, which is where we would start getting a little bit worried about concentrating too many low-income households like all in one area. So you're kind of taking the Fruita community and shrinking it down into one neighborhood. I love the location. I think when we talk about access to services, what I think about is how many people are driving into Fruita to their jobs because they can't afford to live here, and make the comparison there about how far they're driving every single day and what their access to services is, like they figure it out, right? So being really close to a school, and then being what I would consider a very short trip into things like retail, jobs, medical. Those are the kind of services we talk about when we talk about access to services as a project like this. It's not anything different than what a general community member would need.
So what are you using for a calculation as AMI? Like 100% is 52? So 100% of AMI is 100 grand?
For a family.
$102,000 right now for a family of, so they do it by bedroom type or by household size.
Right.
For our 3-bedroom. The Muse will, could support a family of making $102,000 a year would qualify for a 3-bedroom.
Okay.
So when I did the math for the Fruita Muse, I forget what.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you again.
When I did the math for the Fruita Muse Phase 1, I can't remember if it was the Grand Valley Housing Needs Assessment or Cerritos. It was a data set that it seemed like 85% of the population qualified. It's not that simple, but like made between 85% of the population of Fruita made between my low end and my high end. So it's not, you're not concentrating poverty, you're actually doing mixed income.
Yeah, and I would add too, in terms of the surrounding neighborhood, the data about low-income housing tax credit projects tells us that it doesn't have a negative impact on the surrounding properties, especially when you see one that is designed the way that Kim has designed it, right? Well, they look very much like single-family detached neighborhood. There's not as much data about non-LIHTC projects, just because like that's where a lot of the concentration of focus in the housing world is. So I haven't come across studies about other affordable housing projects, but there's a pretty good volume of data that shows that a well-built LIHTC project is not going to cause the surrounding neighborhoods to lose value. Now, other things like traffic and such, like those are development concerns. That's what you address through good design and through your building code, right? That's a piece of land that obviously the owner is looking to sell to somebody. So at some point, the city's going to have to figure out the proper design of that piece of land. And I think, that's what
And I think
building code is for.
I think that's a great point about bringing up that the owner wants to sell to somebody. And you know, as Amy said, this is a project, the kind of project that we've been hoping and looking for versus something else that might come in if we, you know, that maybe we wouldn't be as excited about.
So you had mentioned that it would be between 20,000 and 120 roughly. What percentage of the people, and I know that the numbers were there, but as I'm just talking about it, what percentage of those are you thinking would be in the 50-ish and below? Like rough percentage of the homes that we're looking at here?
Yeah, I think in the homeownership space, so in the for sale units, very difficult to reach all the way down to 50%
I'd imagine.
AMI. So you're kind of looking more like, we'd love to get some units below 80 AMI in there, and that'll depend on the funding sources available to us. Then when you start going much below 80, those households are going to be served by the
Rentals, sure. And then how many are we looking at there?
if you're thinking about 40 rental units.
You know, I was just telling Emily before this that our income average, the average income on the tax credit, so it was probably about the income average on the Muse is probably around 60%. So that doesn't really tell you the number of households.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing at 50 or below, it would be. I don't know, 20 to 30, like half. I don't know.
The reason that I asked that is I think that along the lines of the positioning of the property, when those are the people that we're really trying to help. And those are the people that that don't have access to, maybe they need to get to the bus. Maybe they need to ride a bike to get to City Market. They don't have cars. And those are the people that I'm concerned about, where these houses are there to serve that population, but then once they're there, they're kind of just stuck there. So that's a concern of mine about that. It not necessarily that it's going to cost the homes around there to come down because of the quality of the property, which is the Muse is great, but that's my thing, is the positioning of it because of the lack of support for the people that need other resources around. Where she's saying, like, if it was a different location, it would be amazing. So that's my biggest concern.
I'm not concerned about transportation. Actually, we've done a lot of studies in the affordable housing arena around how many, who has cars and who doesn't. And it's kind of similar to like who has nice Nikes. You'd be surprised how many cars will be there. So we actually went above. We had gotten approved from the city staff to do 75 parking spaces, and I think we went up to 86, just because we know we're going to have those cars and we need a place to put those cars. That said, we did reach out to Grand Valley Transportation, is that what they're called? Transit. A year and a half ago, and they love support. They are very interested in moving the bus stop from 18 and K to either, I don't know if it would be K and Fort Spencer. It could potentially be 18 and a half road and 18 and a half road and K. Because of all the new development.
You'll have to forgive me, that doesn't help me. Where's that at as opposed to your
That's the
property?
road you go north.
Is
of.
it right there? All right,
To
cool.
me.
So it'd be.
It's the west side of Brandon Estates.
Yeah, it's
Good,
where the
okay.
Brandon
So
Estates
that's,
are.
yeah, that's a lot. That's helpful.
Mhm. What are we looking at for like square footage on the for purchase?
Yeah, we haven't designed them yet, but we tend to want to build modestly. The term modestly has changed over the years right now. So in terms of what we're building right now in unincorporated Mesa County for our self-help units, those range from like 1,200 square feet to about 1,600 square feet, and they have attached garages. We would certainly plan for cars, and that's probably about the square footage that we would look at. And we'd be really interested in doing a kind of a combination of some single family detached single units and some attached unit product to try to help with the choices as well as the costs. Certainly on the for sale side, we do not assume if you build it, they will come. Like, we have to sell these things, so they still have to be attractive to people, and certainly even people who feel they're priced out of the traditional market. If they're renting and they're moving up to buying, they want to invest in something they can be in for a while and they really like. So we'll definitely have to pay attention to, you know, market demand, adequate size, places for cars and garages, that kind of thing. Or because we could run the risk of building something that people decide not to buy.
Do you have a rough estimate of where you're gonna land price per square foot? She was mentioning before, Mary Elizabeth jumped in that it was 450 a square foot for the Muse. Is that what you were saying that and then you got interrupted?
Development costs, our hard costs were $300 a foot.
$300 a foot. So is that where we're gonna be? Do you have a kind of an idea of where we would be?
I think tax credit development tends to cost more than not tax credit development. There really aren't tax credits for sale housing. The example I could give you is that we're doing a project on Orchard Mace. It's only 10 units, but we bought finished lots from the builder and hired him back to build. And I think our hard costs, including the land, are going to come in probably about $365,000 per unit. Those units are townhomes, and the smaller units are high 1,300 square foot with 1-car garages. They go up to above 1,600 square foot.
So it sounds like these ones, if they're gonna be, what was it? 12, it's gonna be about 350-ish. We're looking about 350 to 4, probably in that range.
Yeah, if we were to take today's prices and, you know, kind of project them forward, that's what we'd be trying to aim to. We have that gap to fill. We'd love to get what we call the effective price, which is kind of the price that the client feels to below 300,000. Now that's a big gap. So that means a lot of grant writing for us to do that. But what we find when our down payment assistance program, which serves people up to 120% AMI, is that sweet spot tends to be in the very low 300s. And then we would try to get that down even more, like 2, 3 and down payment assistance. And, you know, it becomes the patchwork quilt at that point of how many grants you can layer on to fill that gap and get that lower.
3 or below would be really ideal.
We don't have.
Yeah.
We don't have anything.
No, I mean, yeah, you don't, and you don't, we don't in most places in Mace County. That's that gap that we're trying to fill, and that's a tough one to fill, right? So it definitely depends on the other grant funding that we can get, and it's a very different system than the tax credit, like wildly different, right? So we have to take a bit of a leap of faith there and say, well, we'll find the money, probably in phases.
So what we're being asked to do tonight is either support, apply, or do nothing. I think the challenge is request more information from a timeline. Trying to be sensitive is not really an option. So I think as we look at these are kind of our 3 options that we get to choose as, or you guys get to choose as council.
I think one more thing moving forward before we kind of really define what those different things are, because when I was looking up at the thing as an applicant, it looked a whole heck of a lot different than as a supporter. If we're a supporter, we're just putting our name on a letter basically. But if we're the applicant, we're invested, we're really getting involved.
So
If we could really kind of get a little bit, Dan, if you could tell me, what is that looking? What are the differences there?
I think it certainly gets you a seat at the design table. You know, I mean, if you're going to participate with them, I think you can be a part of that conversation. One thing that I think is talked about, and I mean, not to put both of you on the spot, but I think there's this thought that like, if one doesn't go, nothing goes. Like, Indibuild might not get tax credits, and like, we might still do a ownership development. So it's not as zero sum as you think. We have an awful long way to go too. The property's not zoned. It's not through any sort of site planning process. So I can appreciate like okay, we don't have a whole lot of time we're working with here, but there's a lot of check-ins, you know, with the housing authority along the way. And I don't think that any decision this evening binds you. And I just want to make sure you don't feel that pressure.
Yeah, but it does. So as you say that, what's our out then if it doesn't bind us?
So certainly you can give the money back, you know.
That again?
You can give the money back.
Back to the.
You're not, so between now and December, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you make application and then somewhere along the way you decide you don't want to do this, you don't have to go in December. You know, I mean, is that accurate or not?
Applications would be due around December 1st was my guess.
So this is just a letter of intent. And so I think you
Again,
get to.
if we
explore-
go in as the applicant, we are actually, and it gets awarded, we are locking ourselves into something. If it's, let's say for the Light Tech project doesn't go through for whatever reason, we still have this land and then a 10-year countdown, right?
Well, because we make the application in September, it's not an application that's just a letter of intent. The application comes in December. And I think that we can kind of layer this in some ways upon like, you need to hit some application dates with the city before then. You know, if we're asked to apply, you can ask for them to be a little farther along. So I think we have some opportunity there to like ask them to perform on certain pieces to make us more comfortable to submit that application at the end of the year. Cause that's where I think the unknowns are.
I would just add though, that if you all go forward and say, we'd like to be the applicant, and then you decide not to apply, you've blocked us out of applying, right?
Yeah.
Because we would have been going forward. We don't necessarily have a preference. Housing Resources is fine being the applicant. We're eligible. For the rental part of the project, it's a ground lease either way because Kim can't apply as Indibuild. So she's either ground leasing from the city or the housing authority, or she's ground leasing from Housing Resources. I think there is something to be said for certainly having the city as a partner in the eyes of Chaffa, but we don't actually know if Chaffa gives you more points for that or not. So that's kind of guesswork. But it's certainly not a requirement that you all be the applicant. That letter of support, what we would want to be able to do by the 16th is put in that LOI with the applicant being clear, and then have something relatively supportive from the city saying, yeah, we're behind this. And we'll work with them on things that they need, like the land use and design and such. And of course, you always have a lot of influence in the design work, even if you're not the applicant, through the fact that you have a land use code and that important changes will be needed to rezone that land.
Rich, I want to make sure. You got any questions?
This is all new to me, so I'm just listening and soaking it all up.
I think the timing is rough. Mayor, I think it's very obvious that the timing is rough. It's been, we didn't know when the timing was going to happen, and we did write a letter to the city to say, do you want to be the applicant? I can't remember if it was to the council or city, but it is a tight time frame. And so we didn't come in here with expecting a yes from you. We just felt like, given how great the relationship is now with Indibuild and the city and the housing authority, that it would, it wouldn't feel right to not ask you to be the applicant, because plenty of other municipalities are the applicants. So it feels right to ask you if you want to be the applicant.
Yeah, you go ahead.
A question that comes to mind is, let's just say for whatever reason, we're awarded the 1.5 million or whatever the appraised value of the land, and it doesn't work out, like the purchase of the property. Is that transferable to another property, or is it just tied up specifically with that in mind?
The grant, you mean? Is the grant transferable? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, correct.
I don't know that we see that level of detail yet, but I wouldn't think
doubt
so.
it.
Yeah.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is a lot of things need to happen, but we might already have an arrangement to purchase the property, i.e. zoning, site plan, offsite costs, whatever come to mind. And so, do all these shoes need to drop in order to still pan out? Because then you've got to do something with the property, which is what you had mentioned. And so I was wondering if you could just speak to that, like, where are the outs along the way? Because it seems like I'm hearing from the mayor and the council that there's a lot of steps that need to still happen.
Yeah. I think the out would be whoever is the applicant and has purchased the land would have the opportunity to sell the land and give back the grant money. But if you're the owner of the land, you have to sell a piece of land, right? So that is very different than if it becomes our problem as the owner of the land to figure out, like, this isn't penciling out, what do we do with this piece of land?
But you
Now, it could go the other way around. I mean, I don't know, you could potentially make a profit off of it. So that's all a little bit of guesswork, but
That's a 5-year time frame.
right. So you have
5 years to
some time
rezone
there.
and 10 years to build.
So yeah, I think Kim is exactly right in that the sense is like, if you all felt a really strong desire to be kind of the driver of the bus, then the way to do that would be to be the applicant. But if you don't want to take that role on, it doesn't mean that the project can't go forward. It means we would be the applicant.
I guess that's how I there's still an opportunity to or not to work with this potential development in the future, right? It's just really where does the risk lie? Where does the work lie between applicant and non-applicant, or applicant and as for the city applicant or just supporter of it?
I would just say that a lot of other municipalities were applying. I don't know if this is going to help you at all, but they were applying without a piece of land even identified, and they didn't get chosen, obviously, because they weren't ready. But I think what we're our application, I think, is going to be taken very seriously, because we are going to go, we're going to exhibit a plan to, where we're at in zoning and entitlement and site planning. And, we have a great partnership, and we have a property that is like clearly shown a very strong demand that exceeds supply. And so I think we're going to have a very strong application, whether you guys come in with us or not. But I'm a collaborator. Like, that's what it's inside my bones to collaborate. So.
And I appreciate you guys coming out here and doing it. I know I'm leaning towards not applicant, just because we have a lot going on. I do not like the rush aspect of it. And when we have time to, if things continue on, if we're just a supporter or not, like there's still an opportunity to collaborate or not. Like that's still an opportunity down the road. Just because we say no today does not necessarily mean no forever, right?
Yeah.
Because I do appreciate your desire to collaborate with the city as you want to move into develop or continue developing in the community. But that's kind of where I'm lying is, I know it's the rush. I don't like that at all. And when we have time to talk further, if we want to collaborate or not going forward, or just have that open dialogue that maybe has happened with the Muse or not, as an example, still down the road and still an opportunity.
I have 3 comments. One, just now would be letter of intent. While we want to be actors of good faith, it doesn't actually obligate us to anything. The application is not until December, so we could have more discussions until then. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. I think to Emily's point, if we were to put in the letter of intent that we are to be the applicant, but then we pulled out, that could affect, this versus if they were putting, it could affect how that.
Sure, we wouldn't
progresses.
necessarily
So-
want to go, but we still could. But I'm just saying, is when we're talking about outs, we actually could have an out between now and the application process.
Yes.
If necessary. So there's that. And then let's see. You got on our packet, the recommendation is for the city to apply. Can you guys tell us why that's your inclination, please?
Yeah, if I'll go through it and Dan can add if I miss anything here. I think typically, and maybe we can step back a bit. So with 1, 2, 3 land banking funds, typically often cities apply so that they for a few reasons. Let me just give you a few of those reasons, whether they apply to this project or not. But one is there is no match. So this is essentially, if you're awarded, it's free money for purchasing land that you would like to influence in some way to have a workforce housing or a more affordable, rent reduced or ownership reduced pricing as well. And so, I mean, that's the big reason you have the applicants for that. I mean, that's what the money is for. As you know, that in the future, when a housing authority partners as a special limited partner or with every deal that we've had, we are always asked at some point to give some additional financial contribution, whether that's in the form of fee waivers or a mix of cash, whatever it may be. So this is set up in a way so that that can be a contribution in the future. So not only own the land and maybe have some and be a partner at the table for design and all the different things related to the project from that point forward, but also to limit maybe the future resources you're being asked. They're not asking for any of those currently.
Actually, was in one of my slides that I didn't get to. It said potential ask.
Right. So potential asks.
Up front.
And I don't want to speak for them on this project, but on the other 4 that we've analyzed, there have been asks, right? So this is one way, if you have that as ownership of the land, you can meet some of those asks by saying we can either donate a low lease or whatever. So those are reasons that those are some of the reasons that cities like to participate in from that aspect. That was some of the reasoning that we put into that to make sure that we had a recommendation for you all. I think in some ways we don't have a strong I would if I'm similar to Emily, I think it can go either way. I think we're very excited about the fact to partner with Housing Resources Western Colorado. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, one of our strategies, and then to the point or the questions that have been asked about binding. I just want to make it clear because I think we've clarified it, but if we were to apply for the grant, that doesn't mean we get the grant. If we get the grant, that doesn't mean we automatically own the land. You then have to negotiate and see if you can get to an agreement on purchasing the land. And then you have these timeframes, and there's going to be a point in that process where there's an option to purchase right before you get that grant, most likely, right? That you have that down. But if you, and then there are the timeframes for development, but what Dan was mentioning earlier, that it does not bind the housing authority to be a special limited partner or do anything. It does not bind the city for any land use or zoning in any way. And, as you go through or any other future asks, it does, if we receive the grant and we purchase the land, then yes, it starts a 10-year clock for achieving a partnership of this type of housing that fits this realm of housing within that period of time. If that was not able to be met, worst case scenario, which is not something we ever enter grants into planning to give money back. Yeah, so I don't mean it as it's not a good option, but in worst case scenario that could be a place you're in if you weren't ever able to make the deal happen with anybody, then that would be the position we could be in.
Thank you. And then I just want to remind council that quite a little while, whatever it was, 5 weeks, 6 weeks ago, to some degree, this was brought before us, and for various reasons, we weren't prepared to have a conversation on it then, just the concept, not the presentation. So in regards to feeling short, crunch time, I just want to remind everyone that we weren't able to have a conversation earlier when it was initially kind of brought before us.
All right. Sooner or later, we're going to have to kind of make a decision here, and I just want to make sure. Any other questions or comments? Rich? Jane? Karen? James? Dan or Mike?
I think just one last thing. I think that you asked why did we put that as a recommendation in there?
did recommend us to.
Just why though? I think, albeit like we're kind of, it could go either way. Like, I don't think it's a big one way or the other. As Mike and I were talking about, like, what's the staff's recommendation? I think we heard through the entitlements process for the Muse that, this is an area that, I mean, that was a tough public hearing. And that they felt like a more traditional neighborhood development design was desired in that surrounding area. And we've started to feel that on the edges. And so when we were visiting about this proposal, I think one of the things that made it attractive to potentially be the applicant is like ensuring that is not just a townhome development or multifamily, that we absolutely put some single family in there. And I think we would have a lot of control over that if that were the case. If this didn't work out and we had to place this property, we could certainly put requests for proposals out there for a more for sale affordable product. I mean, so I think that sure, we say control, we go through the design process, all those things I think are really important to planning people, but not really all that important to other people. But I think that's the reason, is that we have the utmost sort of control over the trajectory of this project and this property if we are to own it. And I think that's a compelling point because, as Emily said, it could be sold. If it didn't pound, it could go, and like the tax credit development happened, they could propose on that again. So I think we might have a lot more control over the outcomes if we're the applicant. So just want to make sure that was clear.
I'm sorry, I do have one more
Yes,
question.
of course.
Does anybody have an estimation of mileage between services and the development? Thank you. Okay.
A little closer to the edge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if council decides to move forward with this, I am always in favor of more control. Surprise. So, all right. So at this point, I had a discussion. I don't think there's any other comments. We have either we need to put forth a motion, or we don't put forth a motion and then there's no action. So kind of turning it back to council at this point.
I move to direct the city manager to apply for the CHFA Prop 123 land banking grant request with Housing Resources of Western Colorado and Indibuild for the property located at 1138 18.5 Road, Fruita, Colorado, 81521.
First, is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay, we have a first and a second before you poll council. Any other discussion or questions? All right, hearing none. Oh, okay, I just want to make sure I didn't skip over you.
Nope.
I have a habit of doing that. Shannon, would you kindly poll council?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for participating in that. All right. From there, I lost my place. We're going to go into the city manager's report. Michael.
All right, thank you, Mayor, members of council. I wanted to introduce our new wastewater reclamation facility superintendent, Nicholas Tesmer. And as you all know, Terry is retiring and actually retires this week on Thursday, and has served the wastewater reclamation facility extremely well. Has been and we're excited to, we celebrate Terry and all that he's done as a superintendent, and also just building up and training and mentoring so many people that are still with us or that are at other wastewater facilities. And when you see Terry and Nicholas together, it's almost like a foreign language that's being spoken, but in a very positive, exciting, and fun way, because they are a lot alike, and we are excited. Nicholas has a lot of experience, and wanted to make sure that you all were able to meet Nicholas. And I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't, if you don't want to, if you want to have just a little background from Nicholas, we can do that. Just
Invite you to come up.
brief.
Realize that this is unscripted.
Up at the microphone. Yeah, thank you.
Know the feeling.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nick Tesmer. I'm a native of northwestern Colorado, Steamboat and Craig. I was in the military for about 7.5 years in 1st Armored Division and then 10th Mountain Division for a long time. I've spent a couple years for working for Budweiser and as an industrial mechanic. I got an associate degree in aeronautical sciences, kind of all over the place here. Spent the last 9 years in the Vail Valley working at 3 separate wastewater plants, 2 of them as the supervisor. Kind of took this job as to get back to my more Western Colorado roots and, you know, reality and more affordable housing. Good job on that. Just because it's bonkers up there. Trying to get my family back to the state so I can help take care of them, and really looking forward to working with you guys' process. To speak about Terry, that plant looks amazing. He's done a really good job. I hope to uphold the standard and try and improve and get you guys good value out of the whole place. If you ever want to talk about really nerdy wastewater science, I'm your guy, but yeah.
You have to understand this council loves wastewater.
We do.
Oh,
That's not sarcasm.
you guys are weirdos also. Good.
We all kind of like taking tours, and there may be some logos floating around about sewer sexy kind of thing. So you actually have an engaged council on this.
Okay, fantastic. If you guys ever want to come by for a
Some of
tour.
us are a little more into it than others. I appreciate it and the need for it, but I'm not quite there yet.
No worries. It's not for everyone.
Out of it.
No, thanks for coming, man.
Congratulations and
Thank you, guys. I look forward to working with y'all.
Thank you, Nicholas. I did want to also mention that we did receive word today that in the middle mile project that's been worked on, even though, as you all know, Deeply Digital has been building that middle mile connection, working with us from our carrier neutral location, where we connect along I-70 and then to fiber that is coming from Utah. It's a group called Emory, and then it connects into Grand Junction and then connects into this large regional backbone for fiber. There's been a temporary workaround, and that's why many residents have already signed up with Clear Networks for the fiber that's being offered. But we did receive word today that the final fiber bridge from is ready for Emory to splice, for us to splice into Emory and complete that backbone, which is a lot of progress. That's been a long project, so we're excited for that. That's Deeply Digital finishing that, and then their sister company, which is Clear Networks, has started applying for their permits to start doing their build of fiber to the south side of Fruita. So we'll see that they're all right. Their plan. So what we saw all throughout the north side of Fruita, our south side residents will start seeing as well. And the plan was for this fall and winter for that to be built out. So we're happy to see them moving forward. And then I wanted to mention that a local group, Fruita for Equality, they've been having monthly what they call living room conversations and about different topics. And a week from tomorrow, so next Wednesday, their event, which begins at 5:30, is going to be about community and community connection, and basically talking about Fruita values and a lot of things that we find that we talk about quite a bit. So what they've invited us, any of you, to attend. This is not inviting us to be the speaker. It's just inviting us to join in with whomever comes, and it's a pretty free flowing. There's a very specific format to these. It's a format that our library system uses for community engagement that they are emulating through their series. And so we'll send more information on the exact details, but, and we can put it on the calendar. I think the mayor and I were trying to attend, for sure. And, if more attend, we'll have it on the calendar, even though it won't be any city business necessarily. And again, it's not the city as a speaker. It's just getting people's thoughts and ideas and having a community conversation around that topic. And that's everything I have for tonight. Thank you.
I'm just going to jump in first since you talked about invites right before the meeting. And Shannon, I'll get this to you so we can make sure all of council. But it is with, I'm just going to read this. It is with great pleasure. The Fruita Masonic Lodge number 120 invites the Fruita City Mayor and City Council members to the Cornerstone laying ceremony celebrating the 120th anniversary of the Fruita Masonic Lodge number 120. That's going to be on September 21st at 2 p.m. The Cornerstone laying ceremony is an event open to anyone who would like to attend, but they specifically wanted to make sure all of council was invited. There's a link on here, but Shannon, I'll make sure I get this to you. If you could kindly, you or Mike, get this out to all of council would be wonderful. Thank you. So I'm going to start with you, James.
No, nothing to report other than the same old thing. I know it's been the 14 days, 15 days from the tree dude. We were there yesterday. It's not down, but I told the girls when we were looking at it, I said, well, it was 14 days from a Friday 2 weeks ago. Yesterday was Labor Day. I know we had it scheduled. So is that tree coming down?
Yeah, I'll let our Public Works Director, Kimberly Bolin, answer that.
You never get out of a meeting without speaking. It's our goal.
Too. Kimberly Bullen, Public Works Director. Mr. Mayor, members of council, we met with the property owner last Friday. There was some question about the easement right of way. We told him we would come back and make sure that we had all of our information. And we extended it for 2 weeks to give him time to take that tree down. So it's the
Another 2
19th.
weeks.
So it's the 19th that he has until, and he did have some scheduled time out of town. So that's where we stand.
Not that this doesn't reflect on you, but my pushback to that being is that when we originally talked to him about it, wasn't he really reluctant, and wasn't it, if the city wants it? So it feels to me like we're just stalling at this point, and this tree is very dangerous. It's literally sitting, like right now it could fall. And then we just extended this for just, I don't know. Yeah, no, it's just right over. I mean, it's literally like this over a walkway. Like it could fall like right now. And I just don't understand why I extended him. Why did we extend him?
There were some questions about where the trail easement lies, his property line, the right of way, and
Yeah, I don't understand why that would extend, like it still needed to be done regardless of an easement, regardless of the property line, regardless of all that. And I thought.
Mike, do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah,
Let me finish though, because when we talked about this the other day, we had an appointment already scheduled to get it down. So I'm just confused. I don't understand why we're letting this happen.
Yeah, well, we didn't know about these questions that came up, and I know Mayor Elizabeth's on, and she's been working directly with Kimberly on this, but I mean, we can obviously go in our areas, but we're also talking about someone's private property. So getting into those nuances, we wanted to make sure that we had those answers, and we didn't have that.
When we did it originally, did we not, we weren't sure at that point? And I'm sorry to be, this is bothering me.
these were
This is
questions-
really not safe for the community. I don't understand why.
These were questions raised from the owner of the property.
But when we talked to him before, we've already had, I don't understand why did the conversation already happen? The time frame came and now we've had a new conversation of things that should have been talked about originally. I don't understand.
Was it his stance that it's his property and we can't?
Yeah, but where was that?
Yeah.
But why didn't he say that last time?
No, he did not. Yeah, we would have addressed it if he
I
brought it
thought-
up last time.
I thought we were told that he is the property, that was his statement that was made when we talked about this last time, was that he said if the city wants to cut it down, they can come do it. That was a quote that someone said.
Right. And then we told him when we were going to cut it down, if he did not cut it down. And then these questions came about the property. And so we started working on making sure we verified those and that's what extended it.
So I will tell you that staff went over, they leaned on the tree. The tree hasn't moved.
Mhm.
It doesn't look healthy, but it doesn't appear to have moved any further. So
Okay, I mean,
I
just,
don't
it
know if
seems
Mary Elizabeth
ridiculous to
has
me.
anything.
I don't know, Mary Elizabeth, do you have anything to add? I want to speak for you on the.
Sure. Well, I mean,
legal
I,
side.
I don't want to, I'm not going to divulge legal advice in an open meeting, but I understand your concerns and I have been working with Kimberly. I was not obviously present at either one of these meetings, but my understanding is that this last meeting, the property owner did raise some legal issues. So those were what we're trying to address. At the same time, he was leaving town for 2 weeks, and so he would not have been able to take care of it himself in his absence, and asked the city to confirm what the property rights were in that area.
So if he doesn't remove it by the 19th, are we able to?
We will.
How that works?
We will contract with a tree company because we don't have the equipment that can stabilize that.
We already have the tree company lined up that would do that. Yeah.
Now, I hate to say this, but that's what we were told 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
So now 2 weeks is going to come on the 19th, and are we going to have another excuse?
No.
No,
James,
we
these
got
are
I'm
not
it.
not meaning, I'm not meaning it to be
Yeah.
like, literally think about it from.
No,
brought this
I
up a couple
understand,
weeks
but
ago. It was told it was going to be dealt with in a couple weeks. We're a couple weeks later, and now all of a sudden some magical. thing
we're
that you
trying to
said,
protect the
"No,
city
get it
from
out,"
legal
and I'm
issues.
just a little.
James.
There are legal issues that come
No,
up.
I get it, but at that point, it seemed that point I was told that it was a 14-day legal thing at that point.
I think where the issue came up was we were following through code enforcement. We sent
Mhm.
the letter and then he requested a meeting to come in and talk with myself.
So that was the extension.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I just needed something to clarify because last week when I was told our code was 14 days and that we had given him that. So now you
Yeah.
can understand why I'm coming in 14 days and going, why are we extending?
Yeah, no, and we're set up. We've got the tree quote. We've got the company that'll come in
Sure.
and do it. So.
And I'm totally not upset at you. It just seemed a little crazy. I was like, okay, thank you, Kim.
Anything else, James?
Nope, that's me.
All right, Aaron?
I'm curious, and this probably won't surprise any of you that were at the retreat, that I'm gonna ask this, but I'm curious what the appetite is. When, Alana was speaking to us about the land trust and that they don't work with, properties within the city unless they come to the city. I'm just curious, because as you guys know, with my magic wand, I was hoping for, some option for landowners if they wanted to keep it farmland or land opposed to selling to developers that they could, really magic wand, get paid the same as developers, but she obviously said that's not possible. But just if we would have the appetite to allow them to come into properties in the city, have conversations with property owners that are within the city limits and growth boundary, actually.
Well, I thought you said they're open to it. They would just let the
Ask
city
the
know.
city. I'm asking, do we want to be proactive and be friendly about that and say, hey, we would be okay with those conversations happening without, and I don't even know if that's possible. And I'm asking just appetite, like because it's just something that.
How does that work with the way that the urban growth boundaries already established? Is that kind of why they stay away from it?
Yeah, I think it's because, she talks about working with multiple properties. And so it would take, there potentially would take multiple properties that would be interested in that. And if they are, I mean, we've never precluded any, she's not saying that there's a permission from the city in advance to actually have the conversation.
Yeah,
She's saying
understood.
she would come to the city and say, are we aware of any issues but if you had multiple properties of significant acreage that we're looking at doing that, it would depend where, it would depend on, what's already in development, those types of things. Though, to James's question, the urban growth boundary, designates that a change in use would then, would then, if a property owner wanted to change existing use that goes from the zoning that they currently have, then they're told by the county to work through the city's voluntarily annexation. And it shows that if that were to occur, that the future land use within the city, if annexed in and zoned in the city, would be community residential. But nothing forces that. That's the choice of the owners. So the owners can, if they have a farm or choose to have a farm, they can continue to have that farm and with or without the land trust. If they want to approach the land trust to see if that's a way that helps them in that preservation, then, the land, they're only because it's in our urban growth boundary would they come and see if we had any worries or concerns about that.
Current city limits. That would just be.
But ultimately, we don't have a say, do we? I mean, it's ultimately up to the landowner. And then as a city,
Okay, well, she just was saying that they specifically try not to do that. And so I just wanted to know if we needed to.
Well, they were created for the buffer zone. So that was one of the purposes of that entity, as she mentioned, is to help preserve the land within those actual buffer zones. So I think what she's saying is they would want to check with, whether it's Mesa County, the city, but in our urban growth boundary, with or without any of that, it's up to the landowners if they want to change the use or not. Yeah.
I'm going to the D51 luncheon on the 20th. I don't know if anyone else is going.
I'll be there.
Okay, awesome. Okay, great. So I just wanted to say that we'll be there.
Yeah, you got an email on your thing. If you want to go, you have to.
Oh, yeah.
So, Councilperson Purser, just one thing, the reason why the land trust typically doesn't try and buy any conservation easements in our urban growth boundary is typically because that's viewed by the cities as like, now the public's going to have to bear the cost of extending those sewer and transportation projects. So they typically think that could cause some strife.
Sure.
Because then those would be borne by the public. But if that's not the policy direction, then of course that can change, but that's generally the rule of thumb.
maybe.
I am good. I don't have anything to report.
Rich?
The Tourism Advisory Council had an interesting individual involved in marketing who came in and presented to the council their perspective on Fruita and the promotional material. And so as we go forward and looking at companies to represent Fruita, I think it presented some ideas and some perceptions that I think the council will take into effect and into consideration as they look for someone to take that role. That's about all I have.
Okay, great. I don't really.
I should add, I'll be not attending the executive session due to conflict.
Yes.
I'll be MIA.
No. We'll know where you're. We'll know. I really don't have much. Taught a class at CMU to their poli-sci. I just got to say, there's some smart kids out there. They asked a lot of good questions. I took my presentation from 12 slides to 4 slides, and we only made it through 3. So it was just great conversation. And a number of them were from Fruita, and heavily encouraged them to get involved with different boards and commissions, because there was generally the overall, which was very encouraging, was how do we get involved and how do we influence what happens in our community? So that was great. And that's all I have. So with that, I have to pull up the proper documentation. I think right now I know how to use an iPad. So are we adjourning this meeting? No, we're going into executive, then coming back and adjourning. That's why I like having you next to me. All right, hold on, I'm getting to the paperwork. All right, with that, I need a motion to move to convene into executive session.
I move to move into executive session.
The purpose of receiving legal advice.
Oh, I didn't know it was a whole thing. Sorry. To convene an executive session for the purposes of receiving legal advice from the city attorney pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, parentheses 4, parentheses B, and determining matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy with regard to negotiations and instructing negotiators pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, 4E with regard to Mind Springs Health request for financial assistance.
We have a first.
Second.
All right.
I know.
Counselor Miller,
Get on that.
Yes.
Counselor Parrish, Counselor Purser.
Yes.
Counselor Hancy. Counselor Williams.
Yes.
Motion
All right,
passes.
that just for the record, council and Mr. Hancy is going to excuse himself due to conflict of interest on this. And you will not be coming back for the final adjournment. So, thank you.